Hey everybody, welcome to NAMA.
I almost said good morning, which is clearly wrong.
It is not morning. It is hot though. Very hot.
It's hot.
Hope everyone's doing well. We're going to give people a second to join the meeting.
Yes, happy July.
Did you copy the questions over to document or is it just on Facebook?
No, just leave it on Facebook. We got quite a few today.
We did
which is
get quite a
great.
few
Hopefully we can get through most of them.
Yes. Okay. I accidentally made this video unlisted. I don't think that should affect how people can see it.
Someone's watching at least.
Yeah, at least one of you is watching. There are 3 of you. Welcome. Hey, how's it
That
going?
means it's working.
Let us know that you can see and hear us and all that good stuff. There we go. I made it public. There we go. Okay, excellent. Glad to hear you can hear us. Let's see. Do we have any news before getting to questions?
You're getting ready to go to New Mexico.
I've got a lot of trips coming up. So I'm gonna go to New Mexico, and then I do a little group of workshops on the East Coast.
Do you remember what states those are?
Maryland and Pennsylvania. And then I'm gonna be in California. Dr. Roger Brantis is gonna be in California. Just so you guys know. Some of you guys know that I'm part of the Ethology Institute. Some of you guys followed that a little bit. The Ethology Institute is officially shutting down. It's going to be closed at the end of the year. And Roger's going to be in California for the IAPC conference, the science portion. He's a keynote, I believe. And I'm not going to be able to make it to that, but some of my trip is going to overlap to California, where I'm going to be training my horses. We're going to try to get together. And so those of you who are part of the school, we're going to have a member event there. So it might be interesting. Yeah, we're going to do some live streams and stuff. And then I'll have time for some private lessons. So contact me if you're interested in that. I'll have a little bit of time, not a whole lot, because we're narrowing down on me getting my actual horse. And so exciting. Let's see what else. We just had a game day. It was a lot of fun. We tried some new games out. I'm going to post a little debrief for one of my games in the group today. I was supposed to do that yesterday, and I just remembered now that I need to do it. Do we have any other game days coming up? We put something on the calendar around Easter.
Oh, I don't know. That's next year.
Yes, indeed.
I think we're going to do Christmas before that.
Christmas game days, okay.
But we haven't announced the date or anything.
Yeah, partially because I'm not going to be in town most of December.
Yeah, so that might be a New Year thing.
Yeah.
But we played. Do you want to talk about the sniffing on a curve game that we tried out for the first time?
You should. I wasn't even there.
Yes, but you came up with the game.
Go ahead.
So this is a game where instead of getting a yes or a no when you call alert, you get a letter grade. Like A+ is the nose is right on source. F is like not even an odor. C would be something like definitely an odor, but not what I'd really like to see in training. And, it's sort of a sliding scale. It's hard to say exactly where everything is, but it has an interesting influence on the handlers. One of them is a lot of waiting a lot longer to call alert because they want to get the A or A+ when they do know that the dog is in odor, and potentially getting fewer points than they could if they just went ahead and call it, because we were giving points all the way through D. That we did.
I don't know what you did. I wasn't there. I did it different the way I did it.
How did you do it?
I don't know. I have to compare notes, which we haven't.
Okay. Anyways, like in trial, you can get yes within a broad range. You can still get it essentially a yes, points of some kind within a broad range, but you could get more points if they were closer to source or clearer about where odor was. If, for example, it was elevated, maybe they couldn't get to source, but they could be clear about where it was coming from, or less clear. So it was interesting. And it's something I would like to play blind.
Yeah.
It would be really interesting to experience the different way of processing as a handler within that game. But anyways, I hadn't ever seen it played before. Michael played with it at some workshop or something. So that was fun. And then we played Be Kind Rewind, which is just kind of getting a redo of a search, which is one that I have wanted to play for a long time, but you don't always have good search areas for it because it's better if they're similar and you can kind of recreate similar kinds of problems and then see how the handler does. And they, before the second version of the search, they either have to say, I want to keep my points from the first one, or I want to gamble that we're going to do better the second time. And it was really interesting to see how handlers made that decision. So anyways, that was fun.
Absolutely. Let's see. August schedule should be going out at some point. There are openings in our July classes, I believe. There may not
Probably.
be. Check,
Maybe.
double check. There may or may not be openings in our July classes.
And because they're dropping, sometimes there aren't, and then there are. All of a sudden, things come up in life. So you can always get on a wait list or
absolutely.
audit and might get in.
Okay,
All right. Should we start with questions?
let's go for it.
Okay. My dog sometimes catalogs. I don't want to reward him, even though I know he did it. Is this something that I should try to train him to stop doing, and how would I do it? Maybe highly reinforcing him when he does alert. Is there something else I can do?
Yeah, you should buy our Mastering Multiple Hides course, which is really all about fixing cataloging. That's what that course is focused on. And I think you should avoid this sense of not wanting to reward him, even though you know he did something wrong. Forget that. First off, forget about reward. You reinforce behaviors. And so when the dog alerts on a hide, that behavior is reinforceable. There are small exceptions to this, but it doesn't matter if he cataloged on his way up to it or something like that. It's reinforceable.
You certainly don't want less response.
Yeah. What you need to do is set up environments that don't induce cataloging, which means doing more single hide searches. If there's no other hide to find, there's no reason to catalog.
Though it may take quite a few repetitions to undo already learned catalog.
And of course, as always, more stickiness. Teaching the dog to stick to a hide and be excited about a hide. This is, again, in a single hide context, but then extends into your multiple hide searches. If you do that, then you won't have as much cataloging. The next thing is to try to identify what types of hides your dog is avoiding. You don't have to worry about why he's avoiding them. He could just be. We don't even go there. It's not important. Just, are there any themes to what he's avoiding? He's avoiding higher hides. He's avoiding ground hides. He's avoiding corner hides. He's avoiding hides he has to step on things to get to. What is he avoiding and why? And set up more of those for him, again, in single hide context to reduce any avoidance.
Or is it something like, if I find this hide, then I'm going to get put up, so I'm going to go have some fun for a while before I go to it? And then that, has its own things that you would address. I also wanted you all to say hi to our little replacement, Keebler, who's sitting right here.
He made an appearance at the game day.
Keebler went home, and his mom gave us that Corgi.
Yes.
And then she asked if she can ask questions afterwards. So I just want to say to everyone, if you have follow-up questions, definitely ask them. In some cases, maybe they might need to wait until the next NAMR. In some cases, there's something you can answer in the chat, or you can email us directly. It may depend on the complexity of the question, or you can book time with us, or whatever. But we can definitely get back to you in some way. Mm-hmm. Anything else about cataloging?
I don't think so.
Okay. Do you have any suggestions for nosework specific conditioning exercises for Elite and Summit if you aren't able to work large spaces enough to do 5 to 8 minute searches on a regular basis? Things that can be done at home in addition to keeping them healthy and fit outside of nosework.
I think even though it's always a good idea to go and work big spaces and new spaces and things like that, I don't think there is such a thing as a space too small to do a 5 to 8 minute search. It's just how you do it. Most of the time when we do our endurance exercises, we put out 5 or 6 hides, and as they're finding hides, we're placing new hides, and they find hides and we place new hides, and you can keep that going for as long as you want. You could do that for 20, 30 minutes if you really want it, even in your bathroom in a tiny space. So
yeah, and that I don't know what you call that, but I call that the endless hides game. And 5 minutes is usually like the minimum time that I do for that.
yeah.
Exercise.
So there's that. Second thing is making use of large spaces that you don't even think about. Things like, I used to do this. I don't do this much anymore because we live rural. But when we lived in the city, instead of going on a walk, we would do a search around the block. I would go walk around the block, pre-plant some hides, or walk the block and plant hides as I went. And then as we went our second pass, there were hides to be found. Or I pull my dog out and we'd go walk around the block. And sometimes that took 20, 30 minutes for them to find. Of course, this means that you have to be more vigilant about the dog pottying during the walk at certain times and things like that. But there are large spaces available to us all that we sometimes don't even think of because we don't think of a city block as a search area. But there's no reason it couldn't be a search area.
I also want to say, like, more on the fitness side of things, that neither of us are certified dog fitness trainers. Although we do have lots of thoughts and opinions on that. There are some certified fitness trainers who are also nosework trainers, who you might want to speak with or look at their
Alex
stuff.
Woodruff is really into that, and I think she's got lots of podcasts and webinars and things like that.
Yeah. One big thing is heat acclimation.
Yes.
I think that especially in these longer searches, the dog's heating up. They're moving. They're using their brain really hard, and that's also heating them up. And so if they're not regularly heat acclimating, I think that they're going to struggle in Summit.
Yeah. I keep hearing people being more and more focused on keeping their dogs comfortable in the heat, and less talking about just letting them be uncomfortable for acclimation purposes. It's good to have a setup that keeps your dog safe and whatever in the heat, but the best way to keep your dog comfortable in the heat is to expose them to it, take weight off of them. Like, if your dog's overweight at all and you're complaining about heat, you have nothing. You just got to lose weight on them. That is the single most important thing to acclimation.
Yeah, it's spending time hanging out outside when none of us want to. Although the particular question asker lives in California, and in California, if you're working during the day when it's hot and then you come home and it's cooled off and beautiful, it can be quite difficult to work on acclimation. Yeah. But one important thing with heat is like exercising them to where they're a little warm, and then taking a break in the shade with water for 10-15 minutes, exercising some more. Of course we have to be careful, but we need to give them that time to get used to it, to build that endurance, the heat endurance plus the exercise itself. But I know quite a few dogs who were who had very targeted heat acclimation that ended up really kicking butt at trial because they weren't bothered by the overly hot day that was happening that day.
I'm always excited when it's a hot day because it's like, I know my dogs are going to do well. and I know that lots of other teams who might have higher level nosework skills than I do aren't going to do as well because they focus on their nosework skills in the air conditioning, and I just make sure I get some heat conditioning on the dogs. It makes a big difference.
And with your, hunting dogs, they are exercising outside a lot, and of course also swimming and all this other stuff that's very, very muscle building. So of course, muscle building stuff also is important. Cardio is important. Making sure that their neck is feeling good and doing well is really important for the harder high hides. If your dog struggles to hold their neck up for an extended period of time, and so they're dropping it and then checking up again and then dropping it, just because of either a skeleton or a muscle issue, then that really makes those hides a lot harder.
Yeah. Which is another exercise to exercise your dog for 20-30 minutes on a nice warm day so they're tired, and then do a nosework search. And when I do that nosework search, because sometimes it's hard when the dog's tired, it's hard to get them going. Typically, I'm going to do 10 toss game. I'm going to do something that gets them real excited, gets them like to reach down deep to get a little bit more energy.
And some of these dogs, sorry.
Go ahead.
Some of these dogs, and I think this dog may be in this category, they really exert, like they put everything out there from the first moment. And so they might even get, tired a little bit faster than necessary.
Correct.
It also depends on where you're trialing. I've trialed up at elevation a couple of times in Summit, and that is so much harder than trialing at Summit at, since I don't live at elevation anymore, than if I'm, going down to Florida or over to Maine or something. And so, if you are trialing at higher elevation, then make sure that you find ways to acclimate to that, whether it's going up to the mountains regularly where you live or going up, several days early before the trial and, hiking and doing nose work and all that so that they know what they're getting themselves into.
Yeah. So I see this question in the chat. How do you set hides while you're on a walk? My dogs would smell it and not want to go on. So you can use the wind to your advantage. If the wind is blowing the correct way, you can set hides and the dogs won't smell it. If you're in a place where you can safely and legally go off leash, going off leash and waiting for the dog to get ahead of you makes it easier to set them. But there are ways to do it. And if that becomes difficult, then just set them ahead of taking the walk. Yeah. Go out, quickly run, set hides, and then come back and run your dog. Yeah. That's probably the easiest way.
Another thing I think for the nose work conditioning is doing a longer blank before they have odor out or encounter the odor. If I don't have a big enough space that I can set odor way far away and work from the upwind side, then I'm going to do blank for several minutes before setting a hide.
Cool.
I am looking for help with high hides. We really struggled with paws on paint during vehicle searches. We were able to fix that, but now Tracer doesn't check up as much and is missing high hides in Elite. Would love any advice.
Yeah, so I am working on my Mastering Elevation course. It's got a bunch of drills in it. I know I'd started doing that at one point in the past and then kind of took a break from it as I was trying to figure out how do I do what I want to do virtually. And I think what you need to do is kind of go back to basics and teach the dog to climb on objects. This may even be outside of nose work. Do simple hides where you expect the dog to put their paws on things. Not cars, obviously. I teach my dogs don't jump on cars, but I teach them to jump up on other things.
And I think that context difference is something they're capable enough of learning that it's fair to make that distinction. Even though occasionally they might forget, they might, you might have to manage a search a little bit or something. But my extremely vertical dog doesn't put her feet up on nose work. On vehicles. Although the very first vehicle search she ever did, she went over the hood, which was quite embarrassing. That was in training, not a trial.
Yeah.
And I think if you're really worried about the feet going back up, you can train the dog to work elevation without putting their feet up at all. But I do think that asking them not to express themselves in a way that makes things easier for them can make things harder if they're like holding back because they know that they're not supposed to do things. But it is possible, though I do think in some cases it may be easier to train them to express themselves as much as possible and then add an alert specific to elevation.
Yeah.
I've done that with a couple of elderly dogs where they had done whatever they wanted, leapt at the ceiling if they wanted, and then were old enough that their owner didn't want them doing that anymore, and so then we just added basically a sit and stare.
I think that's something worth doing once the dog is at a point where it's no longer safe or comfortable to go up. I don't recommend doing that until that stage. But and the way I view elevation is as a maze that instead of the maze going deep, it goes up. And so I'm trying to ask my dog to figure out their path up to the hide. We're really lucky where we live. We have a lot of parks that have these bathrooms that are like on hills. And so we've got a hill with a bathroom and a ramp up to the bathroom. And so we can go down here, put a hide up the ramp at the door of the bathroom. And it's like 20 feet up the ground from here. And the dog is catching it and it's trying to figure out how to get up. They climb the hill, they climb the ramp, they get there. And so it's all, nothing feels, they're not even jumping on anything. They're just finding their route up to get to the hide. But when they start, it feels like a 20-foot up hide, and that is kind of ideal for what I want to teach in elevation.
Yeah, and I do strongly believe in doing a lot of hides that are right at or just below what the dog can reach when they lift up, if they're physically safe to do that, and that develops a lot of belief and precision that they can take into higher hides. I do think for some dogs you have to do a segment of time where you're doing a lot more higher hides than that to bridge the gap if their personality needs that. My border collie did, although I don't think my Mal did. So it just depends on the dog. Sometimes you do have to layer a bunch of exercises close together so they can put all those puzzle pieces together. But then going back to, I can, if I work for it, I can just reach it. I think that's quite motivating.
Absolutely.
Okay, anything else about that one?
Yeah, no, I don't think so.
Do you want to answer that question real quick?
What question? Go ahead.
She says, I certainly see a difference with my dog at 7,500 feet versus 4,500 feet, even though we're at the higher elevation a few days every week. Do you think the odor moves differently? I think probably in different ways. I think it may be more sensitive to other changes, like that the barometric pressure changes can have a more dramatic effect on odor at elevation at times, although I couldn't back that up necessarily. But Jill Kovacevic talks a lot about odor at elevation because she trains, trials, and hosts at elevation of various heights. So if you listen to her podcast, I think she has a lot to say about it.
It's hard for me to say, is the odor moving differently, or are the dogs not used to working in that environment? Mm-hmm. Maybe it's the odor, but maybe it's also just the dog's actual acclimation, and the dogs who live there every day might not look different than a dog who lives at a lower elevation, who lives there in their respective environments, but when they switch, they struggle.
Yeah.
And so then it's hard to say, is it the odor? Is it the dog? Is it some combination? I think we'd have to have a bigger study kind of sample sizes and other things.
Well, and I think, my first summit with Icy was in Estes Park, which is quite high. I think it's around 8,000. And I had a headache and felt awful, and she seemed exhausted after the first search of the day. I think she could very well have had a headache, or at least, was feeling the effects of the difference in oxygen and all that. So her she worked hard, and her searching didn't look that different, except that she was exhausted, and that of course affects searching quite a bit, and maybe felt a little fuzzy. But I've also had weird. We trialed in Wyoming a couple times. That's quite high. And most of the highs, I didn't feel like anything was weird. And then there'd be one that would just disappear completely. But you could argue that happens other places. I do think, something like humidity, maybe it's not exactly analogous, but I think it's a similar thing to think and talk about, that like a dog who's used to absolutely no humidity versus one who's used to maybe moderate humidity versus a ton of humidity, those are all going to struggle when they switch areas, even though I think that less humidity to an extent is helpful for the dog, but then no humidity, or as close as you can get to no, is probably not better, because moisture can be valuable. So don't know. More ideas on keeping puppy focused.
I think focus is a matter of discipline. You have to teach it. I think, and when I say that, I'm saying that tongue in cheek, because puppies have no trouble focusing on things that they want to focus on. If it was a rabbit in the yard or something, or another dog, they can focus for hours. So when we're talking about focusing, what we're talking about is the dog focusing on what you want them to focus on, despite other things pulling their focus away. And so the drills that you need to do are impulse control drills and obedience. Lots of stuff where the dog has to ignore their food bowl and do other things. There's a bowl of food on the ground. They want it, but they have to sit and hold the sit. They have to recall. They have to go to their crate, and then they get released to their food bowl. Things like that teach the dog that focusing on you is the route to what they want, rather than focusing on whatever else in the environment they want to focus on. And we take those drills pretty far. That's what we do with our puppies most of the time, puppies and adolescents. It's all just about teaching the value of cooperating with us.
And I think, you have to pick your moments. Sometimes you're there to like work through a distraction, and sometimes you want to set something up that doesn't ask them to work through something major. One hide, simple, get it done, and leave. And then maybe they're in the mood where they can progress something more complicated, or maybe they're in a mode where you should only be doing some real quick stuff.
Yeah, I think you have to recognize though that having more of these impulse drills and being able to work through all of this focus stuff makes it possible for you to have other goals. Whereas if you don't have focus and then you have other goals, you may not be able to do them because your dog is just competing with other distractions.
And sometimes, if my border collie is super distracted by sheep, like of course she's going to be super distracted by sheep. And I think that in many cases, giving them an outlet for what came in their genetics is very helpful. Although you may go through a phase where they're then extra obsessed, and then they learn how to function around that. But there may be really good reasons that they're struggling with particular distractions. Okay. As a working team at a workshop, you use small bean bags to get the dogs back on track sometimes. Can you talk more about those? Homemade? Purchased somewhere?
Just Amazon. I had already been throwing rocks, and I was like, I don't want to throw rocks at a car necessarily, or at a window, as the case may be. So what could I throw that if I accidentally hit a student because I was annoyed at them, wouldn't hurt? And I was like, maybe a bean bag. And so I just looked up bean bags and bought a huge bag of bean bags.
And, in some cases, a little clattery noise can be useful for getting the dog's
sometimes
attention.
it's startling.
It can be very startling. So
and a bean bag, it makes a little bit of noise, but not a lot of noise. And more importantly, it makes noise everywhere. One of the problems with rocks is you throw it into grass and it doesn't make a noise. But the bean bag still goes, it just makes a noise when it hits the ground because the bean's inside of it. So it's just a way of getting the dog interested in the environment without the handler being check here, or playing the hot or colder game with their body language. Are you looking for a beanbag?
I thought we had one right here.
They're all on the crate over there.
Okay.
The
ones he's using are about this big. They're
big.
Not much. About like that.
Maybe that's a little. It seems a small.
In any case,
yeah.
And of course, if you're finding yourself having to throw beanbags constantly, then you've got some other things that you need to work through.
It's a way to get through something without the handler doing the help, but it doesn't replace the need of going back to foundation drill, so you don't need to throw up the beanbag.
Yeah, and in some cases, if you knew that was going to be a hard area for the dog to get to, pre-planting a box or something might make a big difference.
Yeah.
But it's information. So if you find yourself wanting to, my dog's not going over there. What do I do? Okay, why is my dog not going over there? What exercise should I be setting up versus trying to manage it with either a lot more handling, unless you're working on handling, or boxes or throwing things or whatever. My dog is odor obedient, but after alerting, doesn't stick well to source. We're starting a leap this fall, and I need her to stick better.
I agree. You should get her to stick.
We could also, if we want to, because we often do, quibble about if your dog won't stick, are they odor obedient?
Yeah, I was going to say that. I think when I usually talk about odor obedience, I say odor obedience means two things. Odor tells the dog to come, and it tells the dog to stay. So if your dog comes to the odor, great. That's half. It's half of odor obedience. It's not the whole thing. You need a dog who sticks at the odor too, or they're not. In my opinion, they're not odor obedient if they don't stay at it. The stickiness is just something that you have to drill. The drills are pretty straightforward. The drills are in multiple of our courses, and we do stickiness exercises in our class all the time. So if you want to see a class on stickiness, let me know. I can tell you some courses on stickiness, courses or classes. So just let me know, and I can show you all the way those drills work. But it is worth sitting down with a hide and just working all by itself as a component by itself, and then incorporating that into all of your searching. To me, it's just stickiness is what I do with hides every time my dog finds them.
And we pretty strongly believe that dogs should not just wander off when they've gotten paid for a hide. We think that they should be released by the handler, and we've done that in different ways throughout our training and teaching journey. So that doesn't have to look like a cookie cutter thing. But if your dog thinks I run to a hide, I get one treat, and I just leave, then no, you're not going to have the stickiness that you want. So you definitely feel free to talk to us more about that. But basically, it just has to be worth it to them to hang out mentally and physically with the hide until you tell them it's time to go. And then also that when you tell them it's time to go, they can very fluently continue hunting right from the hide. Okay, I have my very first scent work trial this week, and I'm incredibly nervous. Any sage advice for a newbie?
Interesting. I'm trying to think, like, what is the normal advice I give to people? Focus. Like, for me, a trial is an opportunity to gather information. Don't focus on outcomes. The outcomes will be what they are. Go ready to go home with lots of notes, lots of, hopefully, failure for you to go and say, these are the things we need to work on. Because there are things you need to work on. And if you just succeed all the time, you won't know what they are. You'll be blindsided with them at some point. So the trial is an opportunity to gather information. That's how I see trial. And that's the way I tell my students to approach trial. This is the test of whether or not what you've been doing in training has been working. And then you go and you see and you say, okay, I have these things to work on. And then you spend some time training and then you test again.
Yeah. And, this trial is probably at a location your dog hasn't searched in before. So you're testing how she does in a new location. You're testing how you do in a new location. You're testing if she's focused or distracted, if you can read her, if you can call alert, or if you're so worried about being wrong that you choose not to call alert when you should. And, lots of other things that are individual challenges for individual people.
You're also, I would say, especially since this is your first trial, you're also seeing how you and your dog respond to stress. Mm-hmm. That's probably the most important thing in my mind.
Yeah. And some dogs get energized when their handlers are stressed. Some of them have meltdowns.
I try my best. Yeah, I try my best to stress you guys out in class. And I know I succeed for some of you. But I don't think it's different than trial stress,
It is. It is. And it is not a value judgment on you and your dog if there are errors that you have to work through.
Nope.
Okay, ready to move on?
Sure.
I have a dog with a head snap alert. However, as her confidence in what she is finding increases, I find her head snap occurring just prior to getting to source. Not much, but I worry that this will continue to dilute. Suggestions on how to fix.
Don't reward the head snap. Only reinforce going to source. The head snap will occur on its own, but don't accept it. You need to be very critical about you put your nose on odor every single time. That's the only way you get a treat. And sometimes you may have to put it on 2 or 3 times. If the dog's head snapping back before you've had a chance to evaluate, she needs to put her nose back.
And she does say the good news is that she's confident enough that if I just don't react, she goes back and puts her nose on it again, and again with that quick snap back.
Yeah, and that's fine. I think it can help to set harder to access hides, mazes, and things like that. The dog will have this idea in their head that they just always need to go a little deeper, a little bit more, and so they get less focused on it. Pairing can help a lot with this, where the dog won't need to snap back until they've gotten the treat. And so they kind of stop trying to anticipate. They're anticipating because you're there with a treat behind them. But if the treat's in front of them at the hide, there's no reason to anticipate. That can fix that problem pretty handily.
Throwing food at source can also help.
Agreed. Yeah, that's a good one.
Okay. A housekeeping question. How do you handle your Q-tips? I have been setting up a few vessels with odor and storing those vessels in Mylar bags separated by odor and one for mixed if I have a mixed vessel. I use those vessels for a while. A week for heavy use, lots of time out, to 2 to 3 weeks, less training for time left out. Then I discard the Q-tips and refresh. A discussion on another page showed me that many people do not leave odor in vessels, but after their training session is done, they put Q-tips back in the original glass containers for reuse. It appears that some people are using the same Q-tips this way for many, many months. I'm quite interested in what you do. P.S. I got my original odor kit from you, so that's where my Q-tips are stored.
We don't put them. I don't put that much thought into any of this. Q-tips stay in my odor vessels until I get bored of them. Until I pull them out and I go, this doesn't really smell like anything, which is usually several months. We just refreshed my odor kit. I don't know the last time I refreshed it. It certainly isn't every couple of weeks or anything like that. I don't store anything in a Mylar bag. Not that I have anything against that. If you want to do that, you want to pull your Q-tips out and put them back in the jars, you can. I don't like doing that because I feel like once the Q-tips come out and they've been in the environment, now they have odor from the environment that you're introducing into your jar of Q-tips. That can become mixed into the overall odor profile that you might not want. So in general, once they come out of the jar and into the tin, I use them until I feel they're not usable anymore, and then I discard them. However, lots of people are having lots of success the other ways, so it's not a big deal to me.
Yeah.
Do you do things different?
Not much, although I do have a couple things to say. I do think it's funny to read through people's responses whenever there's a thread on odor handling, because there are super major extremes on both ends.
People are very opinionated about it.
Yeah. And some people, like, it would be absolute, sacrilege what we're saying, where it's like, really, come on, like, this isn't explosives or drugs. But I used to put the Q-tips back after every training session, and I think that I stopped because it was a pain in the butt. But I actually strongly agree that at this point, even if I felt like I had the time and energy for it, I don't want a Q-tip that's been sitting around in that scent vessel or, out in the environment and getting who knows what dirt, slobber.
Especially because we teach classes. So that means 8 dogs touching this hide multiple times throughout the training session. They're getting all their drool in it. They're getting whatever. So that's a big change.
Yeah. So I am currently not a fan of putting Q-tips back in the same jar. Maybe in some world I could put them in a different jar, but it just seems like overcomplicating things. And so, so I put them in the scent vessel until I feel like they need to get swapped out. And often, before something like a mock trial or game day or whatever, I usually put in pretty fresh Q-tips for several different reasons.
And that was hard for people when we did that.
Mm-hmm.
Fresher, stronger odors are more challenging.
But I do try to swap them out often enough that my students are seeing quite fresh Q-tips, at least a couple times a month probably, because that is what you're encountering in trial mostly. But I think that seeing ones that are a little more aged, oxidized is also valuable. So I like to sort of use them and then go back again and just loop through that regularly. And I do not worry at all about whether my scent vessels had birch in them last or anise in them last.
I know people who label their or have certain color tins for certain color odor, thing like that.
Yeah, a scent vessel is a scent vessel for me because we don't ask them to differentiate between birch, anise, clove, vetiver, myrrh, cypress, whatever odors you're on. None of the organizations that I'm aware of asks the dogs to differentiate, so who cares?
No.
Once they're on the odors.
One follow-up question was, so you don't feel like Q-tips lose their odor and cause fringing, obviously. Obviously, they lose their odor eventually. There's nothing left. But that's not what causes fringing, which is interesting. This seems very confused. Larger quantities of odor cause fringing, not weaker quantities. Larger quantities of odor cause fringing because the dog, either they create large pools of odor away from source, or because the dog is used to this strength of odor, that's what their normal strength of odor is used to, and then they encounter a stronger odor where the strength they're used to is farther from the source, and so they alert there instead of driving all the way to the source. So
don't you think one could argue that if your Q-tips are so lacking any more odor, and you're paying that.
You're paying a whisper of an odor.
Yeah, I try not to use Q-tips that are that.
Yeah. None of our Q-tips are ever that. If you can't smell it, that's probably a good sign that it's too weak. But
I also haven't seen what we're particularly doing causing any problems, but there could always be ways to do things that could cause problems.
With how much you said you're replacing or refreshing your odor, you're never encountering that.
Unless you're starting with a whisper of odor to begin with.
Yeah, depending on how you're scenting it. That's true. If you're refreshing it a different way. It's not a bad thing to continuously reintroduce your dog to strong odor. And I would recommend also changing the volume of odor that you train with quite regularly, going from large amounts of AKC odor all the way down to weaker amounts of NACSW odor. So the dog gets focused on getting to source rather than what concentration of odor they're supposed to alert on or anything like that.
That's my first response to does it cause fringing. Now, besides what I already said, I do think that working within that range usually helps work against fringing because of exactly what Michael's saying. That source is source, no matter what amount of odor you're encountering within source. It's the scented Q-tips within the scent vessel, not just random bits of odor molecules in the air. Are there some follow-ups we need to
Maybe someone's saying about whether or not the odor vessels degrade from having the oils in them. I don't know if that's true or not. If the odor vessel got degraded enough, I just buy a new one. I don't worry about it.
I try not to leave my Q-tips in the 3D printed vessels, but I haven't
I don't use a lot of them.
Problems in the regular, either metal or heat shrink tubing, which are the main two that I use. So don't worry about it. I mean, I don't worry about it. I'm not saying you don't have to worry about it.
So another question is, do you have any suggestions on where to order black or brown Q-tips? I haven't had any luck finding them unless they have plastic sticks with them versus paper. I just went on Amazon and looked it up. It looks like these are correct.
I can't tell what kind of.
I can't tell what kind of stick it is. It looks correct.
Yeah. Paper.
Yeah, the first choice seems like it's all paper.
So yeah, if you look on Amazon and I'm sure you know how to do this, but in case anyone doesn't, open up the description. It does look like there are some that are fairly available on Amazon.
Yeah. So yeah, I would just do a Google search, and if you're not sure, or an Amazon search. I don't think
I've owned any black Q-tips in
we never
years.
use them. Yeah.
We used to have some, but I never bought more.
You can order them directly from certain Nosework retailers, but
they're always more expensive. But of course, they may be scented, and this way you have to scent them yourself. So.
Yeah.
What else? Okay. Also, so there is one follow-up. The fringing issue would have to do with when the dog encounters stronger odor trial with a alert on pulling because they're used to weaker odor, which is what
we kind of addressed that. Yeah, but if you're changing the volume of odor regularly, that keeps the dog focused on source.
Yeah, and what I wanted to say was I do think it causes problems to mostly work quite weak odor. If you're like always using like one NACSW Q-tip, I think that causes problems. I think if you're using one NACSW Q-tip within a context of using all these different other amounts of odor where you're regularly cycling through, then I don't think it's a problem. But I wouldn't hang out on the very low end for huge amounts of time without having the other ones in there. Okay. I have been using objects that Jake can climb on to practice elevated hides. For example, picnic tables under a pavilion to source higher hides on a post. This is working well. Do you have other suggestions to help with sourcing elevated hides? We talked about that a tiny bit.
Yeah, we did. I think you're already on the right track. I think it's just going and exploring places around you that have access to this. When I travel for trials with my dog and I have a hotel with outdoor stairwells, I love doing elevated hides there.
Yes, those are awesome. Sometimes you can just find those in random
bleachers can be fun because the dog has to go up and down and in and out. And it builds confidence because a lot of dogs don't like stepping on bleachers, and you will have bleachers in Nosework searches quite regularly. Looking for construction areas and mounds of gravel or dirt.
Yeah, spaces that are safe, of course.
Yeah.
One that people often I don't think they utilize enough that most people have ready access to is their couch.
Yes.
Or beds.
The walls behind the couch where they can jump up on the couch and then on the back of the couch and then up on the wall.
Yeah. When I am at a hotel room, my dog's up on the furniture anyway. So I will regularly set hides where they can utilize the chairs or couch or bed in the hotel room. Of course, we all have to be aware of who our dog is. How safely can they climb on these objects, and how likely are they to put their nails in the wall? Don't set it in a hotel room if your dog's going to put a nail through the wall.
Yeah, and I know dogs that I train with because they go into a search and they're jumping on picnic benches and tables for no reason, which I love because I do think it helps them get more information.
I think so many dogs.
As long as you have control and you can tell them to get off when you don't want them.
Yeah, when it's like a nice dining hall, don't let them do it.
Yeah.
But I think, we see this a lot with small dogs where if they're confident to get up, you can see that they so much more easily solve problems if they get high and then come back down. And I think that a lot of bigger dogs also benefit from that, but we don't see it as regularly in them because they're often above the hide anyway. But I do think that it's really helpful. Next.
Yeah, go for it.
I've been working through Michael's intro lesson since mid-April. Kevin, 7-year-old Basenji, understands the assignment, and we've achieved most of the 10 points from your ready to introduce odor list.
Nice.
I've been having an issue with the reinforcement part. We're still on primary, and I praise profusely when he finds the hide. The problem is that Kevin doesn't care about my praise.
That's okay.
He already knows he's a fabulous, typical Basenji, and I'm feeling a little left out of the team. I'm thinking about starting to introduce odor a little earlier than your list suggests. My reasoning is that using parrot hides would give me a chance to provide reinforcement that he cares about. He's very food motivated when learning other skills and tricks, and this would make me feel more like part of the team. What might be the downside to that approach? So I want to say that I totally understand the emotional piece of like you want to be involved and you're not being able to be as involved. And I don't know if you have had other nose work dogs, and so you're used to being more involved in the team.
I don't know. I'm lazy. I love the dog not needing me.
Yes.
Go for it.
Well, that's what I'm getting to. Like, you are going to have a lot of time with this dog where you're having to be really involved. So
you're going to become too involved.
Yeah.
Very quickly. Like,
so
it's going to happen.
I would encourage you to like enjoy the time when the dog gets to do it for themselves. He is getting to, even though we encourage the praising, sometimes petting component in the primary stage, he's getting to do this for his own self. For his enjoyment, his getting of the food. I'm sure he's aware that you're there. And even if he's not the kind of dog that like melts when you praise him, he knows if you're socially celebrating the find with him.
It's also worth mentioning that this may be a time where you have to take the dog's individuality into account. That may also be just who he is. And you might interject yourself by putting the food in your hand quickly so that he develops a need to interact with you, but maybe he's just never going to be as interactive as some other dogs. He is a Basenji after all. Basenjis come across a spectrum like any breed, but most Basenjis are more on the independent side. So maybe we need to kind of acknowledge who he is a little bit. But yeah, I would. And I would love to post your 10 milestones in the group. I'd love to see it, and I can give you suggestions. But if you want to put them on odor, put them on odor. I have no problem with that. Yeah. The 10 milestones is not supposed to be a roadblock for you. It's supposed to be a way to give you things to do with the dog on primary, because I have so many people who just set food in boxes for a year and don't understand why they're not making progress.
And a way to evaluate where you and the dog are.
Yeah.
And so if you feel like you're almost done with it, that is more than most people.
Yeah.
So yeah, nothing I said was to discourage you from putting him on odor. One of our dogs made a noise that startled me. But that once you're on odor, you can't go back really. I mean, not that you can never practice on food. We could have a whole discussion about that. But like you're going to be in the super involved piece for the rest of it.
And it sounds to me like you're where you should be right now. Like everything is going correctly, and enjoy it and make sure it's happening in new environments. And then once you start introducing odor and introducing you giving food, he's going to become very interested in you, and you're going to have to go back to a lot of this independence building. So you want a nice solid foundation of this first.
Yeah. And so when you put him on odor, you're probably going to have to go through a stage where you are undoing his new over focus on you. And that can be a little frustrating also. So, there may be things that are better on odor. A lot of us love getting the dog to the odor stage, and it's, that all is very fun. But it may not even, like Michael was kind of saying, like not fully fix this exactly. And also I would be now I don't know you or your dog at all, but I might be a little worried that if you're putting him on odor for yourself to be more involved, that may suck him into you a little more, or he may find it off-putting and it might repel a little bit. And so even if you put him on odor today or tomorrow, try to make sure that the focus is not on your involvement directly.
Yeah.
Okay. For each of your existing online courses, are there any plans to add additional descriptions, such as which exercises are included with each?
maybe eventually in some of my free time. The easiest way is just to ask me if you want to know what exercises are in there, but maybe I should add more descriptions. To me, it's like the title gives you the general idea, and I know there's some description on the courses, but maybe not a lot.
So a couple of them have almost met.
Yeah. Yes.
And I think
thanks for reminding me. It's something I need to work on.
When they were built, it was sort of the idea that the people who were going to get them already were familiar with how we handle those topics.
Yeah.
But now that they're more,
it's reaching a broader audience, and so I need to
add that. Yeah. Okay. How to train a pooling problem when your dog found the hide that is causing the problem and can't figure out that it's coming from that hide. So I think that this is like the dog finds the hide and then they go back and rework the pooling because they don't quite realize or understand that they have already sourced that. How to train a dog that is working a pooling problem that gets stuck and can't figure out the direction it is coming from and keeps going back the same direction or up and does not look elsewhere.
I can't tell if these are two different problems.
I think they're two related problems. Yeah.
I think the answer to both of them is basically the same, which is don't. Just let the dog work it out. Let the dog waste its own time and figure it out on its own. And don't try to rush the dog out of the area, out of the pooling. Let them fully investigate it and get bored of it. The dog's doing it because he's curious. As the dog does it, they will become less curious and they'll move on their own. So that's my advice. Do you have any advice?
That's basically what I would say.
Yeah. I don't think, and I get it if it's in a class, sometimes we want to move on, but even if it's not a class, when I'm doing private lessons and things like that, I see people really eager to push the dog off a hide once they find it. It's like, no, let the dog, and when you pick up a hide, let the dog investigate, notice and sniff the area and see, oh, it is gone, but there's still odor here. Okay, that's interesting. And then the dog moves on their own and you follow them. That's the best way to do it.
Something I might play with is trying to set, if you can, a really good pooling problem where it's pooling into a bunch of clutter. So a bunch of chairs quite close to each other, other kind of spindly objects that can catch a lot of odor but aren't very heavy. And the dog, assuming they find the hide and they go back into the pooling, I might start to pull apart the pooling, kind of like rubble pile, so that as you pull it apart, they have more access and more information potentially, and then working back to it. And I don't know, I just feel like there might be some puzzle pieces in their head there that might help. And you get the complexity of moving objects around, which is useful.
Yes.
We have one question that came in over chat, but I'm actually not sure that I understand it, so I hope you're still here. So someone has a question about their dog returning to hides with her nose freeze. She was doing an exercise where there were open boxes scattered around the environment. Many of them have odor, and as the dog progresses, the number of hot boxes decreases.
So you're removing boxes as they're working?
Yeah, so I'm not sure if the question is the dog is going back to found hides, what do I do? Or she feels bad because the dog is doing her nose freeze.
The trained final response is irrelevant. All dogs have a trained final response. All of them do. It's not relevant. What's relevant is the dog thinks they should get paid. Now, why does the dog think they should get paid? Is it because they're frustrated and bored and just want to get paid? Is it because they haven't been communicated clearly? Or is it because when you have a bunch of scattered boxes with hides in them, the dog can't tell if they've been there before or not? They're just not sure because you guys get lost in those searches. Of course, the dogs are going to get lost in that search. So they're like, hey, here's a hide. Is this the one I found already? I don't know. They
have no idea.
I found 20 other hides because who knows how many hides are out there. Yeah. So it could be that the dog just isn't sure because they don't have that good of a memory.
Okay, so the handler is afraid she's going to discourage the TFR because the dog is going and not getting paid.
And even if you do, that's okay. You need to discourage the trained final response when it's a false alert. When it's a hide you've already found that you don't want it, you have to discourage the trained final alert. You're not going to kill it. Just think about it this way. I'm doing obedience, and I ask my dog to sit, and they lie down. Okay? This is competition obedience. The dog can't down when you say sit. So you fix it, no sit, however you choose to fix it. You give a no reward, whatever. Is that going to discourage the down? Maybe for a short time. It's a necessary part of the process. They need to distinguish. When I'm asking for a sit, it does not mean a down. When I'm asking for a down, it does not mean a sit. And same with nose work. the train final response has a time and a place, and other times and places it does not belong. And you're not obligated to continue to pay it in these other contexts.
Yeah, like if your dog freezes on the corner of a chair and there's no hide there, you're not going to respond to that at all. Now, I do think you as the handler have to decide how you're running an exercise. If you're running an exercise with a complicated mess of boxes, maybe you remember what the dog has and hasn't found, maybe you don't. Is it even reasonable to say, I'm only going to pay the first time if you don't know whether or not it's the first time? I've been at different instructors seminars when they've said, just pay every single time because we're not worried about that period. Now, there are too many hides and too much complexity and too many distractors and whatever else. I'm just going to pay every time they go. You may not want to do that. That may not be how you want your dog to think things go in a nose research, and that's pretty much of a personal decision. And in which case, I would pick them up as I go, unless I have a way that I can perfectly remember which ones the dog has and hasn't found, or work with another person there marking down and then somehow communicating that to me very quickly so that I do know. But that's a complex setup to decide that you're not repaying. And I think I'm not going to go into details, but I think this exercise came from an instructor, and so I would also recommend that she reach out to the instructor she got the exercise from and see how they expect you to handle the dog returning to hides.
Yeah, absolutely.
And with my dog, if I know she's returning to a hide and she doesn't know she's returning to a hide, I will
just
tell
pay
her.
Or you can do
in
that.
many cases, I'll just say search. Like that means to her, oh, I'm supposed to move on from this. I'm not getting paid for this one. But if you're remembering incorrectly, then you're going to mess your dog up. If you tell them they've already found a hide and they didn't, they might stop telling you about hides they haven't found. So you have to be very careful. And there are definitely a lot of instances where I would just not mess around, just repay it, just send them on. They didn't remember whether, I don't think, can be in their head exactly. I don't think they remember that they already found it. Might as well just pay them and let them move on. And I think containers are an extra tricky place to tell the dog, I'm just not paying you anymore, when you don't know how many there are and you keep asking and asking and asking them. I do think that there are exercises you can do over time that help them, but I also think that a lot of people get more false alerts in containers because they're telling their dog they're not going to pay them and there's nothing else to be found, and so they just end up making something up out of stress or confusion or whatever. So
hopefully that's helpful.
I know it was a whole bunch of
Yeah.
things. That is all of our questions for today. I am impressed that we got through all of those questions in such a short amount of time.
Yeah.
So again, if any of you have follow-ups, feel free to email us or post in the group or whatever you want. Please also send us your questions for the next NAMA,
Which is
in August.
Yeah, presumably.
That is the next month. Michael's out of town like most of the month. Why don't we do it on the 10th?
The 10th. Sounds good.
Okay. Approximately 5 p.m. open to slight revision.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So we will see you then.
Excellent. See you guys then.
Utilize this heat and do some acclimation.
Absolutely. Don't let it go to waste.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.